The air was thick with the smoke of suffering. Joshua had no memories of peace. He was born in the blood-soaked land of Egypt, cradled by a mother whose arms trembled, not just from the ache of labor, but from the fear of Pharaoh's laws. The taskmaster's whips cracked like thunder beyond the walls of the slave camp, and every cry of a Hebrew woman seemed swallowed by the dust of bricks and straw. He came into the world hearing groans, not lullabies, watching chains rattle, not leaves dance in the wind. Joshua's Hebrew name was Yehoshua. The Lord is salvation. But salvation felt distant. The gods of Egypt towered in gold, while the God of Israel was silent. At least that's what many thought. The elders whispered of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, of a covenant forged in blood and promise. But for generations, those words had become stories, not strength. Until one day something stirred. Joshua was a young man, still watching his back and keeping his mouth shut. When Moses returned from the wilderness, staff in hand, eyes burning with purpose. There was something unnatural in the way Moses walked into Pharaoh's court like a man sent from another realm. Joshua had seen brave men. He'd seen fools too. But Moses was neither. When the Nile turned to blood, Joshua was watching from a distance. When frogs poured into the homes of their oppressors, he didn't laugh like some did. He stared, wide-eyed, trying to figure out if this was real. Each plague peeled power from Egypt like bark from a tree, and Joshua knew. This was not the work of a man with tricks. This was war from heaven. But nothing prepared him for Passover. That night, every home of Israel painted lamb's blood on their doorposts. The smell of fire and meat mixed with prayers no one dared to whisper too loud. Joshua's family sat inside, still and waiting. Outside, the city held its breath, until the death cry broke it. The firstborn of Egypt were gone by morning. From the prince to the prisoner, breath stolen in the dark by an angel who obeyed no king but the Lord himself. Joshua would never forget the sound. It wasn't just the wailing. It was the silence afterward. An entire empire hushed by a judgment it could not stop. And then came the Exodus. Joshua walked between walls of water on the dry bed of the Red Sea, but he didn't look back to see them collapse. He didn't need to. He heard Pharaoh's army drown in it. Chariots, horses, and men swept into the deep like dust. This is where Joshua's true training began. Moses took notice of the young man with sharp eyes and a silent loyalty. Joshua didn't argue. He didn't posture. He listened, obeyed, and learned. As the wilderness tested Israel, it also forged Joshua. When Amalek attacked from behind, targeting the weak and slow, Moses didn't raise an army. He chose a man. Joshua. The first time his name appears in Scripture, it's not as a scribe or servant. It's as a military commander. And he didn't just fight. He won. But not by his sword alone. Moses stood on a hill above, arms raised to heaven. And Joshua learned something deeper that day. Victory is not just about skill. It's about submission to God. As Israel wandered, Joshua stayed close to the mountain. When Moses entered the tent of meeting to speak with God face to face, Joshua remained outside, refusing to leave the presence even after Moses had gone. He wasn't just chasing promotion. He was chasing the presence. Then came the mission that would shake him. 12 spies were chosen to scout the promised land. Joshua was one of them. What they saw was staggering giants, walled cities, armies, iron chariots. 10 men returned trembling. Only 2 came back standing, Joshua and Caleb. The 10 cried, "We're grasshoppers. They'll crush us." But Joshua's voice cut through the panic like steel. "Do not be afraid of them. Their protection is gone. But the Lord is with us." For that, they nearly stoned him. And so, for the fear of 10, an entire generation died in the desert, except Joshua and Caleb. While bones turned to dust under the hot sun, Joshua's resolve deepened. He watched the elders who once mocked him fall to time. He buried comrades. He endured the long wait. And with every year he aged, but never grew cold. Then came the day Moses climbed Mount Nebo and never returned. And the voice of God thundered in a way Joshua had never heard before. Not through Moses, but to him. "Moses my servant is dead. Now therefore arise, Go over this Jordan, you and all this people. The mantle had fallen. The servant became the leader. The shadow became the light. But Jericho waited, and the river still roared, and the hearts of men trembled. This was not the end of Joshua's journey. It was only the beginning. The sun rose slowly over the plains of Moab, painting the Jordan River in a blaze of red-gold fire. Birds fled the banks. The water churned like a beast awakened. Spring had come, and with it the flood. The Jordan wasn't just full. It was raging. To the naked eye, it was a poor time for a river crossing. To seasoned soldiers, it was suicidal. But God does not wait for conditions to be ideal. And Joshua knew it. This was the moment. 3 days earlier, scouts had returned whispering that the river was impassable, swelled past its banks. But Joshua didn't flinch. He gave no speech, no battle cry, just one command: sanctify yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do wonders among you. Wonders. That word hung in the air like lightning before a storm. The people remembered that word. It reminded them of Egypt, of fire from the sky, of rivers turned to blood, of angelic plagues and sea walls. But this wasn't Egypt. This wasn't Moses. This was Joshua, and all eyes were on him. Joshua stood alone that night, overlooking the river. The winds whipped his cloak. The stars above were silent, but his soul was not. He wasn't doubting God, he was asking how. How do you lead over 1 million people, including children, elders, and animals, across a torrent that swallowed trees whole? Then, quietly, he felt it again. Not in the wind, not in thunder, but in the stillness. The same voice that once called to Moses from the burning bush now whispered to Joshua, "This day, I will begin to exalt you in the eyes of all Israel." Joshua's breath caught. God would not just do a miracle. He would establish Joshua as his chosen vessel. The time for hiding in Moses' shadow was over. The God of Sinai was now standing with him. At dawn, the camp stirred. Trumpets blew low across the valley as priests lifted the Ark of the Covenant. The golden chest that held the tablets of the law, the rod of Aaron, and the manna that once fed a nation. But this wasn't just a holy box. It was God's throne on earth. Joshua gave the command, "When you see the Ark of the Lord your God, follow it. For you have not passed this way before." He didn't mean direction. He meant destiny. This was not just a new path, it was a new era. And what lay beyond the Jordan was more than land. It was the fulfillment of a 400-year-old covenant. The land promised to Abraham. The inheritance denied to a generation of unbelief. Now the torch was lit again, and the Jordan waited. Priests carried the ark forward, robes snapping in the wind, bare feet pressing into soaked soil. The water didn't part immediately. It didn't retreat with a roar. No, it responded to obedience. Only when the soles of their feet touched the edge of the water did everything change. Suddenly, upstream, miles away near the city of Adam, the waters stood still. Not slowed, not trickled. Stood still. A wall of water, rising higher and higher, defying gravity and mocking reason. Downstream, the water rushed away, disappearing into the Dead Sea. Before Israel's eyes, the impassable riverbed turned into dry land. Path, a miracle, a sign. Gasps filled the camp. Mothers clutched their children. Old men who had seen the Red Sea began to weep. It was happening again, but this time under Joshua. The nation crossed in silence, eyes wide, hearts racing. Each step felt like walking through a door carved by heaven itself. This wasn't just about geography. This was separation, a cutting off from the wilderness. The desert of doubt lay behind them. What lay ahead was conquest. Joshua ordered one man from each tribe to pick up a large stone from the middle of the river, right from where the priests were standing. They obeyed, lifting heavy rocks onto their shoulders. "Why these stones?" someone asked. Joshua answered without blinking, "So that when your children ask in time to come, 'What do these stones mean?' you will say, 'The waters of the Jordan were cut off before the ark of the covenant of the Lord. These stones shall be a memorial forever.'" God didn't just want a miracle. He wanted a memory. As the last child stepped onto Canaan's soil, Joshua gave the signal. The priests rose from the riverbed, and in an instant, the waters of the Jordan surged back with a deafening roar. The gateway was closed. There would be no retreat. This wasn't a test run. There was no going back to the wilderness. They were in enemy territory now. But something happened next that Israel did not expect. Instead of marching directly to Jericho, the Lord gave Joshua a strange command. Make flint knives and circumcise the sons of Israel again. The army stood still. Every male who had been born during the wilderness journey, those under 40, had not been circumcised. Their fathers had died in the desert, and the symbol of God's covenant had been neglected. Now, before the first battle, God demanded it be restored. To the natural mind, it made no sense. Weakening your army before war? Leaving thousands of men in pain, vulnerable in hostile territory? But Joshua obeyed. A place near Gilgal was chosen, and there blades were sharpened. Blood spilled. Cries rang out, not of fear, but of renewal. The old generation died in the desert. The new one was cut into covenant. Then came the final moment. As the camp rested, healed, and prepared, Joshua walked out alone near Jericho. He needed clarity. He needed a sign. But what he got was an encounter. A man stood before him, sword drawn, glowing with divine fire. Joshua froze. Every part of him screamed danger. But something in his spirit burned with awe. He approached slowly. Are you for us, or for our enemies? The figure didn't move. His answer came like thunder wrapped in calm. No, but as commander of the army of the Lord, I have now come. Joshua dropped to his knees, face to the ground. This was no man. This was a divine warrior, a heavenly commander. Some say it was an angel. Others say it was the pre-incarnate Christ himself. Either way, the message was clear. This battle was not Joshua's to win. It was God's to fight. And Jericho was next.